Today's video is sponsored by Squarespace. If you want to build a website to an online store and everything else in between, Squarespace is a platform that allows its users to build an online presence for their business.
He was by far the most coveted prospect coming out of high school, and that was during his junior year.
They're not going to be wrong about Andrew Wiggins. They might be wrong in that he may not be LeBron, he may not be an MVP, but when you talk this much about a guy and this guy has this much apparent talent, he's probably going to be an all-star at some point, maybe a couple times, maybe 12 times. Maybe he'll be one of the best players in the league.
Wiggins could average 30 a game. He's the most electric, dynamic talent in this draft. Draft is about potential. He's got the highest ceiling. He goes one.
This guy can be a lockdown defender. He's a freakish athlete. He will get to the free throw line. And remember, he broke the freshman scoring record at Kansas.
On January 11th, 2018, the little homie Bezos dropped a video exploring the idea of Andrew Wiggins potentially being a bust. Now, the reason why I really like this video isn't because I'm this malicious hater that many people try to peg me as, but because it does allow us as a community to try to not only understand where Andrew Wiggins is as a player, but also get a better understanding of what we consider to be a bust in the NBA. And when it comes to being a bust, in my opinion, it doesn't matter how good of a player you end up becoming. If you are significantly underperforming from the original expectations that were placed upon you, then at some point we have to start considering you for a bust. And like I stated before, Bezos uploaded this video nearly a year ago. It has almost 250,000 views, a like to dislike ratio of only 71%, which isn't good whatsoever, and the comment section is littered with a bunch of excuses for a player that many people expected to be one of the next best players in the league. And quite frankly, when Bezos originally dropped this video, I really didn't care that much about the opinions that people had for him, because it would only be a matter of time before his play started to talk for itself. But with that being said, there is one thing that constantly irritates me, because people believe that the only reason why critics view Andrew Wiggins as a bust is because people constantly compare him to all-time greats, when the reality is, it doesn't matter how far you lower the bar, Andrew Wiggins consistently fails to meet expectations. Now, I'm going to talk about this largely because it is part of my argument, but I will be brief with this. Andrew Wiggins entering the NBA was expected to be the next all-time great. You can easily find multiple articles, videos, and even tweets comparing him to almost any all-time great shooting guard or small forward within the last 10 to 30 years. I mean, from Kobe Bryant to Clyde Drexler to Dominique Wilkins and even LeBron James. All of those comparisons and expectations are out there for anybody who wants to make any ridiculous claims that Andrew Wiggins is somehow not that far off from the expectations that were placed upon him. But I will address this. For the people out there who believe that Andrew Wiggins could somehow be a late bloomer, which I hope to be true, but the odds of that happening are extremely slim. And the reason why I say this is because Andrew Wiggins from day one has been given opportunities that most late bloomers do not receive. The example that I constantly hear is Steve Nash, how he didn't peak until his years in Phoenix. However, please be very mindful that Steve Nash actually performed pretty doggone well when he was given a starter role with the Dallas Mavericks, and in his fourth year in Dallas, he became an all-star and an all-NBA performer. Whereas on the other hand, Wiggins, not only has he been receiving starting minutes from day one and has been given multiple opportunities, as well as the organization changing their personnel to best suit Wiggins, by year 5, the young prospect has actually started to regress. And since we all agree upon this, let's go ahead and lower the bar for Andrew Wiggins and talk about some of the more realistic comparisons that were surrounding him before he entered the NBA. Now, in my research trying to find some realistic comparisons to Andrew Wiggins when he was entering the NBA, the one player that constantly popped up was Rudy Gay. Now, for those out there who aren't familiar with Rudy Gay, just briefly, Rudy Gay is a 6'8" small forward who began his career with the Memphis Grizzlies, and for his first 5 to 6 years, and really up until the point in which he tore his Achilles, was a consistent 18 to 20 point scorer. His shooting splits were respectable, had some bounce to his game, and created majority of his shots in the mid-range area, which consequently forced him to take long two-pointers. Because of this, the advanced analytics really didn't favor him that well. On the defensive end, he didn't really show that much effort nor improvement, and he wasn't that great of a passer either. So on the surface, it seems as if comparing Andrew Wiggins to Rudy Gay is pretty fair. Or at least that's what many people would love to believe. Because if you look a little bit deeper on what Rudy Gay was producing in year 5 and compared to what Andrew Wiggins is producing this year, you would clearly see in almost every single statistical category, Andrew Wiggins falls short to even the Rudy Gay comparisons. And this is even true when you look at the advanced analytics as well. Keep in mind that not only is all of this true while Andrew Wiggins has a higher usage rate, but also Rudy Gay was never viewed as a max contract player. Rudy Gay, in my opinion, was on a team with less talent, however won more games. And also Rudy Gay was not the first overall pick in a fairly talented draft class, as he was the 8th overall pick in a draft class that many people are now starting to claim as extremely underwhelming. But again, even if you were to remove all level of context, Rudy Gay, just looking at the raw numbers, is still a better player in year 5. And for the people out there who want to make the argument that you have to look at Andrew Wiggins' year 3 numbers, as that was the year in which he averaged nearly 24 points, the numbers still favor Rudy Gay. So now that we've figured out that Andrew Wiggins is not even living up to the Rudy Gay comparisons, let's lower the bar even further and figure out if Andrew Wiggins is even an average starter in today's NBA. Now, researching this part of the video was extremely difficult, largely because I didn't necessarily know what would be considered to be a quote-unquote starter in the NBA. Because of this, what I decided to do is just set the standard of any player in the NBA who is receiving 23 minutes or more on a game-to-game basis. The second thing I also took into consideration is that you have certain players who may have started, however, they may have only been on like 10-day contracts and they've only played a handful of games. So you have to have played 30 games up until this moment to fit in this search. And then also I decided to remove power forwards and centers from this conversation just to make it a little bit more easier to compare their numbers to Andrew Wiggins. From there, I used all of these requirements, went to Basketball Reference and went to their player index and utilized these requirements through 2 searches. The first search consists of point guards, shooting guards, and small forwards, and the second search only included shooting guards and small forwards. The reason why I did 2 searches is because obviously once I find the average through all of these statistical categories, I'm not going to find a player that has that specific stat line, so I decided to do 2 searches so I can get a range of every statistical category. The 2 players that fit these requirements were Jeremy Lamb from the Charlotte Hornets and BOGDANOVIC from the Sacramento Kings. 2 players that originally I thought Andrew Wiggins should be performing better than. However, when I put their numbers next to one another, I was unfortunately disappointed. Yes, Andrew Wiggins does average more points than both of these players. However, the level of efficiency he's shooting at this year not only is lower than both Bogdanovic and Jeremy Lamb, but also it allows anyone to overlook the 2-point lead in which he holds over both of these players. Furthermore, when we look at the advanced analytics, almost none of them favor Andrew Wiggins, which is extremely concerning, especially when you take into consideration that, again, not only is he receiving max money, not only was he the first overall pick in ironically the same draft class as Bogdanovic, but he also has a higher usage rating, and also he plays more minutes than both Jeremy Lamb and Bogdanovic. And then I continue to lower the bar to try to give Andrew Wiggins the benefit of the doubt, remove everything from the conversation except from scoring, and then even remove Bogdanovic from the conversation as well, is because he's obviously more prone to shooting threes than both Jeremy Lamb and Andrew Wiggins. And then told myself that there's a possibility that Andrew Wiggins' field goal percentage is lower than Jeremy Lamb's by a significant margin, has to do with the fact that Jeremy Lamb doesn't attempt as many contested 2-pointers as Andrew Wiggins, which thus means that Andrew Wiggins is attempting tougher shots, and that's obviously the area in which Andrew Wiggins loves to operate in. However, I was still proven wrong, because not only does Jeremy Lamb attempt contested 2-pointers at the exact same rate, if not a greater rate than Andrew Wiggins, but he converts them at a significantly wider margin as well. And so in short, it doesn't really matter how low of a bar I set for Andrew Wiggins, unless you are making the argument, which I don't believe is a disrespectful one, that Andrew Wiggins should be a bench player. Andrew Wiggins never meets the expectations that has been set out by anybody within the last 4 to 5 years. And I believe within the last 2 to 3 years, Andrew Wiggins' expectations not only have been extremely reasonable, but people have consistently found excuses and continued to lower the bar for Andrew Wiggins, and yet he still has not met any of those expectations. Which is why I can comfortably say that Andrew Wiggins in year 5 is indeed a bust. But you know what isn't a bust? Today's sponsors, Squarespace. Squarespace is a platform that allows its users to build a website or a domain to help build them an online presence. Now, when building an online presence, easily the biggest hurdle that many people try to overcome is trying to understand coding and building a layout and inputting the information to the website. However, when it comes to Squarespace, not only do they have their back, it's extremely intuitive. The layouts and the color placements are extremely fundamental. Inputting certain informations or trying to interact with some of your audience is also easy as well. And in my opinion, easily their best feature is their analytics tab, in which Squarespace can show you the progression and growth that you have made within a certain time frame. Now, if you're interested in Squarespace, make sure you go pay them a visit, because they're giving you not only a free trial, but when you are prepared to make your first purchase, they are giving you 10% off. All you have to do is go to squarespace.com/legendofwinning, or you can even just click the link in the description, because I'll make it even easier for you. But again, squarespace.com/legendofwinning for 10% off on your first purchase. Now, with that out of the way, let me briefly wrap up this video. Going back to the Bezos video, the reason why it's so interesting is because it forces us to answer a fundamental question that should have already been answered to begin with. How far removed does a player have to be from original expectations before we can label them a bust? And when it comes to Andrew Wiggins, granted, some of the expectations were unbelievably unrealistic and completely unfair to him and the potential that he had entering the NBA. But when you're the first overall pick in a very talented draft class, you receive a max contract, and you're on a team that has aspirations of making the playoffs, and they're constantly making changes to the roster to best suit your playing style, you will have expectations that are placed upon you. And the fact that in year 5, Andrew Wiggins is not only regressing, but in the beginning of his career, his expectations were to be the next all-time great. And now we're at a point where we're debating if he is a potential bench player. It just forces me to say that Andrew Wiggins is indeed a bust. But please let me know what you think about the video and Andrew Wiggins in the comment section below. Again, huge shout out goes to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Make sure you click the link in the description, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.